Audiobooks Express presents Chili and Tabasco. Written by Charlton L. Edholm. Narrated by Adam West.
Chili and Tabasco. Drop that bucket, blast you. If you don't want to get plugged, keep away from that water hole. The speaker's voice was as savage as his words, a snarling voice, hardly human. The muzzle of his .45 was no more menacing than the threat, and the curses were no more vicious than the bulldog face behind the sixth gun. It was Black Devery, man-killing outlaw of the Salt Lick Basin. He appeared suddenly from behind a boulder and covered with his revolver the owner of the ramshackle-covered wagon that had halted by the pool in the desert. The gaunt, white-bearded old homesteader set down the bucket before his team and faced about with a jerk. At the sight of Black Devery's stubble-covered face, grim and brutal as a lobo's above the gun, he sent his hand skyward with the speed of a man in terror of his life. "Correct," growled Black Devery. "That's the right move. Ef you'd reach fer your gun, I'd have shot your gizzard plumb full of lead. Now keep your paws up while I get your shooting iron." In a few seconds he had disarmed the old mountaineer. Then, giving the emptied bucket a kick, he demanded, "Who are you? Where are you from?" "Lem Bradford. I'm from Tennessee." "Who gave you leave to take water from that there water hole? Blast you." The terrified Lem Bradford did not know how to reply. His jaw sagged, his face was contorted by fear and rage, between his desire to answer threats with hard words and his wish to keep on living, which involved a soft answer. He could only stammer. Black Devery laughed, and his laughter was as pleasant as a coyote's bark. "Speak up, old hoss. Why didn't you keep off like that sign says?" He jerked his left hand toward the cottonwood, the lone tree above the deep water hole, and the only shelter against the sun for miles around. On the trunk was nailed a scrap of board, aged and faded and shot full of bullet holes. If it ever carried a warning sign, the words had been obliterated long since. "Can't you read none?" demanded the outlaw. An unexpected answer from under the wagon cover made Black Devery jump. A shrill but not unmusical voice cried, "Of course, Pap can't read, nor write, neither. What does it say on your old sign?" The big fellow scowled at the interruption. The face of an 18-year-old girl peered at him from beneath the canvas, but her weakness did not stir him to pity. "Come out of there, gal," he cried, "and don't try no monkey tricks with a gun or I'll kill your dad where he stands." Reluctantly, yet with a shade of defiance, the girl jumped out of the prairie schooner and stood beside her father, facing the bandit. "Put away your hardware," she said. "You done took away Dad's gun, and that's the only one we've got. What for you raising a ruction about a little old bucket of water?" Black Devery nodded again toward the signboard on the tree. "It says on that notice, 'Warning. This water hole is the property of me, Black Devery. Keep off. This means you. Say, who else is in that wagon?" "Nobody. Just me and Pap is all the outfit." "Purty soft." The bandit peered into the wagon and slipped the .45 into his holster as he saw that the girl had been telling the truth. "I reckon I got you two where I want you," he remarked, giving an appraising glance at the team. "Go ahead and water the cayuses. Take plenty for your cooking, too. It's all mine, but you can have all you want at my price." "You want us to pay for it? Pay for water?" The girl's voice was high-pitched with indignation and curiosity. Her father, who had stooped to pick up the bucket, listened in silent anger. "Sure, you pay for water. There's nothing more valuable than water out here in the desert. How much do you want for it?" $50, that's all." $50? You're crazy." Linda Bradford's cheeks reddened and her eyes flashed. "I reckon you're aiming to be funny," she went on. $50? Why don't you say 1,000? "I could if I felt like it. This here water hole belongs to me," he tapped his chest arrogantly, "so I make my own price." The girl's father tossed the bucket into the wagon and said sharply, Come on, Lindy, we'll keep moving. I ain't got $50 to pay for water. Where can we go? It's a whole day's travel to the next water hole. Maybe more, asserted Black Devery with a grin. He was watching the discomfiture of the travelers with malignant joy. One hand played with the butt of his revolver. Linda Bradford gazed about the desolate expanse of Salt Lick Basin, and her heart sank. The sun was low, and all through the blistering Arizona day the homesteaders had toiled across the sands. Part of the way Linda had traveled on Major, her saddle pony. Later in the intense heat she had taken shelter in the covered wagon. All day long she had looked forward to this camp where they could sleep and the thirsty horses could drink their fill. Evidently, they were just about used up, ready to drop in the harness, yet, through the greed of this man with a gun, they would have to keep traveling all night. Linda was furious. Her anger boiled over. She blurted out, "I don't believe this is your water hole at all. I think you're lying. If that sign says anything at all, it says, 'Free water.' Gal, that sign reads like I told you. There's no two ways about it." "Come on, Lindy, let's go," exclaimed the old man fretfully. "You can't argufy with a man that totes a mean gun." "All right, let's go." With tears in her eyes, tears of anger, not weakness, the girl turned away from the deep spring, but Black Devery put out a big, hairy hand. "Not so fast, sis," he remarked. "Fust I gets the $50, or else you don't leave. Your dad already took a bucket of water, and $50 is the price for water here whether you take it by the bucket or by the barrel." Lem Bradford got the drift of this speech. It was a holdup. The sign above the water hole was but a pretext. What the robber wanted was all the cash on hand, and his revolver was all the law behind him. The old man pulled the bucket out of his wagon once more. "All right," he answered patiently. "I told you I didn't have that much cash. Matter of fact, I ain't got but a few silver dollars in my pockets. But there's no use saying anything. You've got the gun. I reckon you'll have to take Lindy's saddle pony instead of money." He dipped a bucket of water and held it under the muzzle of the off-horse. But the girl gave a little cry of anger, and her face turned pale. She ran around the back of the wagon, laid her hand on Major's neck, and glared defiantly at Black Devery. "You shan't have my Major," she cried hoarsely. "It's my pony. I raised him from a colt. I dare you to take him away from me." The bandit, who had followed her back of the wagon, held his heavy sides and laughed aloud. "Dog my cats, but you've got lots of ginger, gal," he roared. "I bet you'd fight like a bobcat if it come to a showdown." She stared at him with blazing eyes, but said nothing. "By shot, you're a fine-looking filly, too, high-spirited and handsome as they come. Tell you what, gal, you give me a purty kiss with them red lips of yours, and I'll let you keep your hoss." Black Devery edged closer, and the girl shrank from him in disgust. His whiskey-laden breath was hot on her cheek. She was too horrified to call for help, paralyzed by terror of the ruffian. But her father had not been as patient as he seemed. Black Devery heard a harsh exclamation behind him and turned to catch the thrown water bucket on the side of the head. At the same instant, Lem Bradford ran at the outlaw with a shovel. Instantly, Black Devery's gun barked twice, and the old man reeled back with a scalp wound and a .45 slug in his shoulder. As the ruffian fired again, Linda rushed forward, seized his wrist, and sent the bullet singing upward. The next moment, she was flung aside like a straw in the wind and staggered to fall a dozen feet away. The outlaw cocked his revolver and took deliberate aim at Linda's father when the sight of a distant rider loping across the plain made him change his mind hastily. The cowboy, outlined against the red sky of sunset, was mounted on a fine animal, which he handled with superb ease. Black Devery did not care to commit murder before such a witness. Hastily he bundled the old man into the wagon and commanded the girl to bandage his wounds. "Not a peep out of either of you," he snarled. "Otherwise I'll shoot to kill. That goes for your old man and for you too. Anyhow," he added, That rider is a pal of mine. It wouldn't do you no good to talk to him." Swinging into the saddle of his own horse, Black Devery trotted out a short distance to meet the approaching stranger. His keen eyes observed every detail: the active, youthful figure in elaborate cowboy outfit, the smooth, boyish face under the sombrero and the weapons, a rifle in a saddle scabbard and a customary six-shooter. Devery made no hostile sign as the rider came toward him. "Howdy, stranger," he said. "Riding far?" "Plenty. Bound for the rodeo at Caliente." "When you stop for water," went on Devery, "I'll ask you kindly to make little noise. I got a sick father in the wagon, and my sister's ailing too. My name is Jones, William Jones, and mine is Carney. Some folks call me Chili Con Carney." "I've heard of you," answered Devery. "Everybody on the border knows about Chili Con Carney, the lad that walks away with the rodeo prizes." "Thank you kindly, Mr. Jones. I've heard your name before, likewise." Black Devery grinned as his horse edged closer. Con Carney's high-strung mare struck out like lightning and almost crippled Devery's horse. "Watch out for Tabasco," said the mare's owner, pulling her away. "She is a devil in a horse's skin, hates strangers, hates other cayuses, hates most everything except me. I tamed her when she was an outlaw." Black Devery nodded. He had heard of Tabasco too. Just now his mind was on one subject only: how to get Con Carney away from there as soon as possible. He had no desire for another camper at the water hole that night. Least of all did he want a neighbor who's a wizard at roping, shooting, and horse taming, a man who had sent many a border ruffian to the pen. It never occurred to Black Devery to demand pay of this man for water for this horse. On the contrary, he was respectful and soft-spoken in his assumed role of homesteader. "Me and Pap and Sis are bound for the Gila Valley," he explained. "We aim to buy a ranch out there or file on free land if we can get it." Carney gave his companion a shrewd glance. Something about the other's appearance belied his words. Devery looked more like a hardened scoundrel than a peaceable rancher, but that was no proof that he lied. The cowboy nodded, and as he drew rein near the wagon, he saw the scared face of Linda peering at him anxiously. Devery scowled at her, and she hastily drew back into the shadow of the canvas. "That your sister?" asked Chili Con Carney. "That's her. The poor kid is all shot to pieces from looking after Dad. She's a nice-looking girl. Oh, Betsy's not so bad as gals go. She's got a bad toothache, and the misery has made her act wild. She talks funny, too. Don't pay no attention to her. And your dad's sick, too?" By this time, Carney had loosened the cinch and was letting Tabasco drink. "Yep, Dad's got brain fever. He's a mighty sick man." "'Pears to me you got lots of trouble," said Con Carney sympathetically. "Tell you what, Mr. Jones, let me stick around and make myself useful. You must need some help with them sick folks." Black Devery did not know how to refuse. He could not keep his face from showing the anger and chagrin he felt, and tried to force a smile that would wipe away the scowl. "Holy smoke! What's the matter, Mr. Jones? Are you sick too?" "Me? No, I'm all right." "You made a face like you had stepped on a rattlesnake," answered Chili. "I never seen such a funny face in my life. I thought you was took with a bad toothache, the same as your sister." "Oh, Sal's always complaining about something or other. Don't bother about us. All we needs is a quiet night. Strangers is bad for sick folks." Con Carney did not take the hint to leave. Instead, he noticed that the mysterious William Jones was not sure of his sister's name. The first time he had called her Betsy, the second time it was Sal. This seemed like a puzzle worth looking into. Suddenly he changed his mind about pushing on toward Caliente. "Reckon I'll stay a while," he observed. "I've got some grub tied to my saddle." Devery could not ignore the hint. The laws of Western hospitality were too strong for even a hardened ruffian to ignore. "Set and rest," he said hastily. I'll have the gal cook some supper directly." He went over to the wagon and spoke in low tones to the girl. "That is my pal, Con Carney," he said. "He's a renegade Texican, bad as they come, wanted for murder and all sorts of crimes. Now you rustle up some supper for both of us, but don't you talk to him none. If you let out a holler, by tarnation, I'll kill you sure." Cowed by Black Devery's threat, the girl left her unconscious father and brought a fry pan coffee pot to the waterhole, where Carney had already started a fire. The cowboy smiled at her genially, and looking into his clear blue eyes, she found it hard to believe that he was as bad as Black Devery had made him out to be. But she did not dare to enter into conversation with him. Only when he said cheerfully, "Good evening, Miss Sally," she answered, "My name ain't Sally, it's Linda Bradford." Con Carney sat and rolled a cigarette while watching her prepare flapjacks and coffee. Devery was at his elbow and followed every move of the girl with a scowling look. All he wanted was to feed his unwelcome guest in a hurry and send him on his way. "Get a move on, Betsy," he snarled. "The coffee's boiling over. Rustle up a tin can to drink out of." The two men ate and drank in silence. Linda fried flapjacks over the coals and filled their plates, and Con Carney remarked, "Them's as good as my dear old mother used to make. God bless her." Linda was startled to hear a reputed murderer speak so gently. She wondered whether this friend of Black Devery could be a hardened criminal at heart. Certainly she felt safer with him around than she did with Devery alone, and after Carney had smoked a cigarette and rose to leave, she flashed him a look that said plainly, "Don't go." But Black Devery was openly delighted to see Con Carney prepare to depart and started to get the cowboy's tethered mare. "Steer clear of Tabasco," cried Carney. "That mare hates strangers like poison." He mounted and rode her close to the wagon. "So long, Mr. Jones," he said. "Thanks for the supper." Then, taking off his sombrero, he leaned over toward Linda and added, "Goodbye, miss. I'd be pleased and proud to be your friend." A snarling oath from Black Devery interrupted him. The outlaw, who meanwhile had mounted his own horse, was spurring as if to ride between the pair. Linda saw the ruffian's hand close to his revolver, and following her instinct of self-preservation, she snatched Carney's gun from the holster and blazed away at her enemy. Tabasco reared and plunged. Devery's horse charged forward, and there was a fusillade that was quickly finished. Linda had emptied the six-shooter, but the shots went wild, and now Black Devery, gun in hand, was upon them ready to kill. With a single movement, Chili Con Carney swung the girl out from under the hoofs of the two horses. By doing so, he lost a few precious seconds that would have enabled him to withdraw the rifle from his saddle boot. Now he was covered by Devery's weapon, and his only chance for life was to put up his hands. At the outlaw's command, he did so. Devery sat his horse a few feet away, holding the .45 on him and enjoying the triumph. "I reckon I've got you roped and hog-tied, Mr. Chili Con Carney," he remarked with ferocious pleasure. "I'm going to shoot all the meat off your bones, you hound, but first I'm a-going to tell you why." The bandit, looming big and brutal in the afterglow of the sunset, was like a Stone-Age savage by contrast with the slender, smooth-faced young man who stared at him, hands upraised, disarmed, but unflinching. Devery continued, "I'm going to kill you because you horned in on my little party. Savvy, this gal ain't my sister. I jest plugged her dad afore you came. He horned in likewise and needed to be taught to keep clear of Black Devery." "Black Devery," Chili's voice echoed the name. The outlaw laughed. "Sure. Now you know who I am. Why don't you send me to the pen? You're the kid that brags about having a feud with all the border outlaws. Yeah? Well, Black Devery is the toughest bad hombre on the border. That's me. But you're not man enough to go up against a professional. You're just a kid." The ruffian's gun roared at the last word, but it was not intentionally. Linda had struck his mount a sharp blow with a harness strap. The horse jumped and the revolver shot went wild. This was Con Carney's opportunity, digging spurs into Tabasco, He drove straight at Black Devery's plunging mount, crying, "Get him, Tabasco, get him." That was all the man-hating, horse-hating Tabasco needed, just the word to go. What followed was a battle royal. Horses and men scrambled together pell-mell, and Devery's weapon exploding harmlessly as Tabasco's hoofs crashed down on him. The mare fought like her weight in wild cats. She extended her rows of gleaming teeth. She lashed out with her heels. And finally, as Devery's horse went down on its haunches, she reared up, towering above horse and rider, and brought down her battering forehoofs like iron bludgeons. Black Devery crumpled and dropped to the ground. His horse fled riderless across the desert, with shrill neighs of terror, while Tabasco, with her ears laid back and the whites of her eyes showing, pawed the ground and trumpeted defiance. It required all of Con Carney's horsemanship to control her. Never had he had such a tussle with Tabasco since the day he had tamed that tiger mare at the Texas rodeo. When he finally brought his mount back to sanity, the cowboy surveyed the scene of battle. Black Devery was lying where he fell. He had not stirred and apparently would never stir again. Above him on the big cottonwood was the sign proclaiming his right to the water hole. Linda had fled for shelter under the wagon. She peered out through a tangle of fallen hair like a wild creature of the woods. Cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes bright. Never had she been so attractive. But neither she nor Con Carney was thinking of the girl's looks at that moment. "Quick," gasped Linda, "help me tend to Dad. I'm afeared that varmint has killed him." In her anxiety over her father, she even forgot the gratitude due the man who had saved her, but Carney respected her the more for her solicitude. The old man was carefully bandaged and made comfortable after Linda's rough and ready first aid had been removed. "Your dad will pull through all right," the cowboy assured her. "I've seen hombres shot up a heap worse than that and lived to kill the man that plugged him." He left the girl bending over the unconscious Lem Bradford and went over to examine the fallen bandit. To his astonishment, the burly ruffian was groaning feebly and making an effort to sit up. Chili Con Carney helped him rise and stagger to the water hole and wash the gashes made by Tabasco's hoofs. "I'm glad you didn't pass out," said Carney grimly. "There's a cell reserved for you in the territorial penitentiary, and the warden's getting impatient. What's more, partner, the reward I draw for turning you in is go on to make a nice little steak for Lem Bradford and his gal. I wouldn't be surprised if it would buy the old man as pretty a little ranch as you can find in the Gila Valley."